Evelyn Carter straightened the collar of her uniform, took a deep breath, and stepped into the grand estate. She was nothing more than a poor waitress, but tonight she was about to face a nightmare orchestrated by a powerful millionaire. The mansion of William Sinclair loomed before her, a castle of wealth with gleaming marble floors, opulent chandeliers, and suffocating extravagance. But Evelyn Carter did not belong here. She was just an employee, while William was a man of unlimited power. William Sinclair's parties weren't just a display of wealth, they were a stage for humiliation. Anyone who caught his attention, especially those of lower status like Evelyn, became nothing more than entertainment for the elite. But Evelyn had no choice but to keep going. Every shift, she endured contemptuous stares, biting remarks, sometimes from William himself. But she needed the money. As a struggling single mother, every dollar she earned was a lifeline for her son, Noah Carter. Tonight, however, would be different. Tonight, William Sinclair had planned a new humiliation for her, forcing her to play the piano in front of his guests. What he didn't know? Evelyn Carter wasn't just capable of playing the piano, she was a musical prodigy. She wove through the crowd, balancing the serving tray with a practiced ease, a forced smile on her lips. She was used to blending into the background, just another nameless servant in a sea of wealth. Inside the Sinclair mansion, the air was thick with expensive perfume and power. Guests sipped crystal glasses of champagne, exchanged hushed laughter, and discussed matters only the rich could understand. As she moved through the room, Evelyn's gaze landed on the grand piano in the corner of the hall, a magnificent instrument, gleaming under the chandelier's light. An art piece, something a poor waitress like her could never dream of touching. Music had once been her world, before life swept her away, before Noah was born, before everything fell apart. As a child, she had played the piano to escape poverty. The keys had been the only place where she felt truly free. She didn't even realize she was staring, her longing resurfacing after all these years. A quiet sigh escaped her lips as her fingers lightly brushed the edge of the serving tray.
"You like the piano?" The unexpected voice was sharp, laced with scrutiny. Evelyn stiffened, spinning around. William Sinclair stood behind her, a glass of whiskey in hand, his piercing gaze locked onto her. She hadn't heard him approach, and at this moment, she wished she could disappear. I'm sorry, sir," she stammered, immediately lowering her head. But William didn't look away. A slow smile curled on his lips, not a warm one, but something far more unsettling. Evelyn knew she had broken an unspoken rule. Staff were never to engage with the host unless spoken to. And even then, speaking to William Sinclair was a dangerous game. "It's a beautiful instrument." For a fleeting moment, something flickered across William's face. Not anger, but something darker, calculating, predatory. Then his smile deepened, but it wasn't friendly, it was cruel. "Beautiful, isn't it?" His voice was smooth, yet every word dripped with disdain. "My wife used to play it. She had real talent. But of course, that was a long time ago." His eyes sharpened, as if an idea had just struck him, an idea he found entertaining. "You should remember your place," he said, his tone casual, yet cutting. "Servants don't get to admire things they'll never have." The room seemed to shrink. Heat rushed to Evelyn's face, a mixture of shame and silent fury burning within her. She wanted to say something, an apology, an excuse, anything to make him walk away, but her throat tightened. Other staff had stopped moving. A few guests glanced over, intrigued by the scene unfolding. But William didn't wait for a response. He lifted his glass, gave a dismissive wave, and turned his back on her, as if she were nothing. And at that moment, Evelyn Carter had never felt smaller. She didn't yet realize this was only the beginning. From that night on, Evelyn did everything she could to avoid William, keeping her head down, working silently, staying invisible. But it wasn't enough. William Sinclair wasn't just a grieving millionaire. He was a man who thrived on control, who wielded power to crush those beneath him. And Evelyn Carter soon learned that once he set his sights on someone, he never let go.
Still, she kept coming back, because Noah needed her. Every shift, every champagne glass she carried was a step toward a better future for her son. She had always dreamed of giving Noah the education, the opportunities she never had. But life had taken a different turn when she became pregnant at 17. The boy she had once trusted to stay by her side had left, off to college with empty promises, leaving her alone with a child to raise. She had never graduated high school, never even had the time to mourn what she had lost. Instead, she threw herself into work day and night just to ensure that Noah Carter never had to experience deprivation. This job might have been humiliating, but it was only a temporary stop along her journey. She couldn't afford pride, not when there was rent to pay and Noah needed a new pair of shoes. So she kept her head down and moved forward. The party continued, and Evelyn Carter faded back into her role, a shadow among the extravagant, weaving through the crowd unnoticed. But no matter how much she tried to forget, William's words clung to her. The cruelty in his voice, the way he looked at her as if she was worthless, it was burned into her mind. Tonight's gathering was even more lavish than usual, even by William Sinclair standards. Wealthy guests drifted through the grand hall, sipping champagne from crystal flutes, while live music played in the background. Fresh flowers adorned every corner, creating an atmosphere of perfection. But beneath the grandeur, something darker was brewing. Across the room, William stood, his sharp eyes scanning the crowd. He wasn't enjoying the party like the others. No. He was waiting for the moment when he would publicly humiliate Evelyn Carter. He had a plan, and Evelyn, whether she knew it or not, had already become his prey in a cruel game of power. Even before the first guest had arrived, William's mood had been bleak. An emptiness clung to him like an insatiable hunger, a loneliness he refused to acknowledge. William had long mastered the art of wearing his cold, impenetrable armor, keeping people at a distance, reminding them of their place, and of his absolute authority. The guests? Mere actors in a performance he had long grown tired of. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, the admiration in their eyes, it all felt hollow. And tonight, he felt it more than ever. Evelyn Carter moved through the party like a shadow. Every step was measured, careful, silent. She had learned to be invisible at events like this, just a server, nothing more. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape one truth. She didn't belong here.
It wasn't just about money. She could feel the divide between herself and the people in this room. They moved effortlessly, as if the world had been designed for them. Meanwhile, she existed merely to survive. Every action she took revolved around earning just enough to make it to the next paycheck, ensuring Noah never endured what she had. As she passed by the grand piano, her gaze lingered. Its glossy black surface reflected the chandelier's glow, radiating a heartbreaking perfection. Memories of childhood piano lessons flooded back, uninvited. Music had once been her world, a piece of her soul. It had been her escape, the one thing that made her feel like she belonged to something greater. And now, it stood before her, a world she had once loved but no longer had a place in. Evelyn Carter hadn't touched a piano in years. She had forced herself not to think about it. Life had pulled her down a different path, one she had never anticipated. But now, standing in front of the piano, she allowed herself, just for a moment, to wonder what it would feel like to sit down and play again. Still mesmerized by it? The sharp voice sliced through her thoughts like a blade. Evelyn stiffened. A chill ran down her spine. She turned, forcing her expression into neutrality. William stood there, whiskey in hand, his gaze sharper than usual. The faint scent of alcohol mixed with an underlying irritation, making the air between them feel heavier. She didn't know what had set him off, but she could tell something was wrong. His smile was a mask, so artificial it made her more uneasy than his anger ever could. And his eyes, predatory, calculating. "I'm sorry, Mr. Sinclair." Her voice was steady, but she had learned from their last encounter, never show weakness, never let him see you flinch. But William wasn't interested in apologies. He didn't even acknowledge it. Instead, he tilted his head, as if studying her. "You've been working here for quite some time now, haven't you, Evelyn?" She swallowed hard, nodding slightly. "Yes, sir." "And in all that time, you've never actually enjoyed these parties. Always working, always serving. That must get dull, doesn't it?" The way he said it sent an icy shiver down her spine. This wasn't small talk. This was a trap. She knew better than to answer, but she also had no idea what he wanted.
"You deserve a little fun, don't you?" His voice was smooth, almost conversational, but it made her stomach tighten. A deep, instinctual unease settled in her chest. William was planning something, and whatever it was, it wouldn't be good. "I've been thinking. Next week is my birthday. It's going to be quite the event. Why don't you attend as a guest?" He paused. Then, with a slow, deliberate smirk, he added, "And of course, bring your son." The world seemed to stop. Evelyn felt the weight of his words, the unspoken threat laced within them. Every nerve in her body screamed for her to run, to refuse. But this wasn't a genuine invitation. There was no kindness in his eyes. This was a trap. But Evelyn Carter couldn't refuse. She depended on this job, and William knew it. And he knew about Noah Carter. The mention of her son's name wasn't a harmless invitation. He was using Noah to corner her. William saw the hesitation in her eyes. He leaned in slightly, his smile widening, though it held no warmth. "Come on, Evelyn. It'll be fun. You've worked so hard. Let me return the favor. I insist that you attend." The way he said it, the weight in his voice, left no room for refusal. His charm was nothing but a facade. Beneath it lay a predator savoring his own game. Evelyn knew this, but she also knew she had no choice. To reject him could mean losing her job, losing her income, and that was not something she could afford, not when Noah was depending on her. So she did the only thing she could. I'd be honored," she said softly. The words tasted bitter on her tongue. "Thank you for the invitation."
Wonderful. William straightened, clearly pleased with her answer. "I'll have my staff send you the details. And be sure to bring your son. I'm looking forward to meeting him." With that, he turned and disappeared into the crowd. Evelyn stood still, her hands trembling slightly. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. But it was useless, because she knew something was waiting for her at that party, and it wouldn't be a pleasant evening. Evelyn Carter knew this wasn't a simple invitation. William had a plan, something cruel, and now she was caught in his trap. The rest of the night passed in a haze. Evelyn continued working, smiling when necessary, but her mind was consumed by unease. William's words echoed in her head over and over. What did he want? Why her? Every instinct warned her that this would not end well. By the time she arrived home that night, Noah was already asleep, curled up under a worn-out blanket. Evelyn stood in the doorway, watching him, her heart tightening. How was she supposed to protect him from all of this? How could she shield Noah from the cruelty of the world when she could barely hold herself together? She sat down at the tiny kitchen table, the silence of the apartment pressing in on her. The truth was inescapable. By next weekend, she would walk into William Sinclair's world as a guest, no longer just a server. But deep down, she knew this would not be an ordinary evening.
That evening, Evelyn Carter stood at the towering iron gates of William Sinclair's estate, her fingers tightening around Noah's small hand. A valet approached, preparing to open the gate. Noah, usually full of energy and curiosity, was unusually quiet. His wide eyes took in the grandeur of the mansion before them. Evelyn's anxiety coiled tighter in her chest, like a knot she couldn't untangle. Every instinct screamed at her not to step inside. But it was too late to turn back now. Evelyn Carter didn't belong here. But she had done her best to fit in. Her dress was simple, worn but presentable. Noah was dressed in a clean button-up and neatly pressed trousers. Still, no matter how much effort she put in, they stood out, outsiders among the elite. The doors of the estate swung open, and luxury crashed over them like a tidal wave. Evelyn held her breath, forcing herself to step inside, as if she weren't already searching for the quickest way out. The moment they entered the grand hall, she felt it. Eyes on her. Not with open disdain, but with curiosity, judgment. No one was outright rude. No one said a word. But their indifference was a clear reminder that she did not belong in their world. Here, status and wealth dictated everything. And in this world, Evelyn and Noah Carter were invisible. "Mom, this place is huge!" Noah's odd whisper eased something in Evelyn's chest. His wide eyes darted around, drinking in the enormous crystal chandeliers, the intricate tapestries lining the walls. "Yes, sweetheart, it is," she murmured. She gave his hand a gentle squeeze. "Just stay close to me, okay?" They moved carefully through the lavish crowd, guests too absorbed in their own conversations to notice them. The atmosphere remained pristine, unshaken, as if nothing could disrupt the perfection of the evening. Servers weaved gracefully through the crowd, carrying trays of sparkling champagne and exquisitely plated hors d'oeuvres. Evelyn had once been in their position. She knew the rhythm of these parties all too well. But now, standing on the other side, as a guest, everything felt foreign, wrong. And somewhere in this grand room, William Sinclair was watching her. He had a plan, and Evelyn Carter was walking straight into his trap. Evelyn Carter didn't belong here, and she knew it. She felt it in every fleeting glance, in the way the air shifted whenever she and Noah Carter entered a room. And then she saw him.
William stood across the room, the same as ever, his perfectly tailored suit, a whiskey in hand, exuding the effortless confidence of a king surveying his kingdom. His gaze drifted lazily over the crowd until it landed on her. The moment their eyes met, her stomach twisted. William smiled, a slow, deliberate smile, calculated, controlled. It sent a chill down her spine. She knew that smile. It wasn't kind, it wasn't casual. It was something far more dangerous, predatory, wrapped in a veneer of charm. Before she could look away, William lifted his glass in a silent toast. Evelyn forced herself to return the gesture with a strained smile, though her heartbeat pounded in her ears. There was no doubt, tonight was a game, and she was William's pawn.
The evening stretched on, thick with the scent of expensive perfume and aged liquor. Evelyn and Noah remained on the edges of the room, trying to be as inconspicuous as possible. She watched as guests sipped wine, laughed at meaningless conversations, effortlessly indulging in their world of excess. Noah occasionally tugged at her hand, his wide eyes filled with innocent wonder at the mansion's grandeur. But she saw something else in him, too, an unspoken overwhelm. Like her, Noah Carter didn't belong in this world. Then, as if on cue, the music stopped. Evelyn held her breath. She looked up. William was stepping forward. He needed no introduction. The moment he moved, the room's attention naturally gravitated toward him. One by one, the guests turned, their murmurs quieting as William lifted a hand for silence. A cold sensation crept through Evelyn's veins. The game had begun, and she was the target. William stood tall, the embodiment of wealth and power, and once again his gaze fell on her, pressing down like an invisible weight. "Ladies and gentlemen." His voice was smooth, compelling, the kind that had effortlessly drawn people to him for years. "Thank you all for joining me tonight to celebrate this special occasion. It is always an honor to host such esteemed guests." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Evelyn swallowed hard. A sinking feeling took hold of her. She just knew, he was about to do something. A glint flashed in William's eyes, something sharp, something cruel beneath the polished exterior. Then he continued. "Tonight, we have a very special guest, someone who has shown a deep appreciation for the finer things in life, especially my late wife's beloved piano." Evelyn's stomach plummeted. Her blood turned ice cold. Every head in the room turned toward her. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it echo in her ears. William didn't look away. His smile stretched wider, his words dripping with mockery. This wasn't a casual humiliation. It was calculated, slow, intentional. "Everyone, please welcome Evelyn Carter, one of our most dedicated staff members." The room fell into an eerie silence. No one laughed, no one spoke. But they were waiting, watching. The tension was suffocating. William gestured toward the grand piano in the corner of the room. "I've heard she has quite the passion for music, and tonight I think we should give her the opportunity to share that passion with all of us." Silence tightened around her like a noose. No laughter, no jeering, but everyone was waiting. Waiting to see what she would do. Waiting to see her fail. Evelyn's chest tightened, her breath shallow. Her mouth was dry. She wanted to disappear,
to dissolve into the air, to escape the crushing weight of their gazes. But then, Noah. His small hand rested in hers, his wide, trusting eyes looking up at her. He didn't understand what was happening. He didn't know this was meant to humiliate her. And for Noah, Evelyn Carter couldn't break. She had to be strong. If she showed fear, if she let the shame consume her, Noah would feel it. And that was something she would not allow. So, she did the only thing she could. She straightened her back, took a deep breath, and gave a small nod. I would be honored. Her voice rang out, steadier than she felt. A murmur rippled through the room. Surprise. No one had expected her to accept. Evelyn stepped toward the piano, each step deliberate, though her mind screamed in protest. She sat down, fingers hovering over the gleaming ivory keys. The air in the room thickened, pressing against her like an invisible force. Whispers stirred among the crowd. She felt William's gaze, sharp, unrelenting, watching her every move. Like a predator, waiting for its prey to falter. Her chest tightened, her fingers trembled. She hadn't played in years. Not since before Noah was born. What the hell was she doing? How would she let herself fall into his trap? But then, from the corner of her eye, she saw Noah. He stood just a few feet away, eyes wide with anticipation. His tiny fists clenched as if he was waiting for something magical to happen. He didn't understand the mockery hidden behind William's words. All he saw was his mother about to do something extraordinary. And in that moment, Evelyn Carter knew she would not let William win. All Noah Carter saw was his mother about to do something extraordinary, something magical. To him, this wasn't humiliation. This was a moment of triumph. A moment where he would see his mother in a way he had never seen her before. And for Noah Carter, Evelyn Carter took a deep breath, straightened her back, and let go of all the tension. She couldn't let him see her break. If she wavered, if she allowed fear to consume her, Noah would feel it too. And that was something she couldn't allow. So Evelyn Carter closed her eyes and let the music find her. Her fingers pressed down on the first key. The sound rang out, soft but sure, like a whisper from the past, pulling her back to a place she once knew. At first, the notes were hesitant, uncertain, but then they began to flow, breathing life under her fingertips. Each key she touched resonated like a memory resurfacing. Her fingers were stiff, unpracticed, but they still remembered. She closed her eyes and let herself sink into the music. Chopin, a piece she had loved as a child, one she had turned to whenever she needed an escape. The music wrapped around her, the melancholic notes reverberating through the vast room. Moments ago, the crowd had been murmuring, whispering, waiting for her to fail. Now, there was nothing but silence. The judging stares, the smirks, they blurred, faded into nothingness. Only the piano remained. Only the melody carried her away from this room, away from the humiliation William had orchestrated. With each passing second, Evelyn Carter's hands grew steadier. The years of absence from music seemed to vanish. All that was left was her, and the notes that had once been etched into her soul. Evelyn Carter was no longer a tired waitress, exhausted from struggling to survive.
She was that young girl again, sitting at her family's old piano, finding solace in the only thing that had ever felt like home. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "Let the music guide you, Evelyn. Don't think, just feel." And so she did. She let the music take her. Her fingers danced over the keys like reconnecting with an old friend, one that had been waiting patiently for her return. Movements once rusty became smooth, effortless. She wasn't just playing. She was pouring every part of herself into each note. Her past, her present, and a fragile hope for the future. The piece ended.
The room was suspended in breathless silence. And then, applause. At first, it was hesitant, scattered, but then it swelled. Evelyn heard it, but barely registered it. She was still lost in the final echoes of the melody, in the overwhelming emotions rising inside her. The applause didn't matter. What mattered was what she felt. Like she had just reclaimed a piece of herself she had thought was gone forever. Without thinking, without hesitation, Evelyn placed her fingers on the keys again. This time, she chose something more powerful. Beethoven. The first chords rang out, bold, forceful, alive with raw emotion. She felt her heartbeat quicken with every note. Each keystroke was a breath held, a pulse matching the intensity of the music filling the grand hall. This wasn't just playing. Evelyn Carter wasn't just performing. She was taking something back, something she had lost long ago. For too many years, she had been drowning in hardship, in the relentless grind of survival, in the fear that one day Noah would be forgotten by the world the same way she had been. But in this moment, she was no longer invisible. She was not just a waitress. She was not just a struggling single mother. She was herself, radiant, unshakable, unstoppable. The final notes crashed into the silence, reaching every corner of the vast room. Evelyn Carter opened her eyes. Her fingers still rested on the keys, the echoes of the music lingering in the air. She looked up, and for a moment, the entire room was frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. Then she turned, searching for Noah. He was beaming. His smile was so bright, so pure, that it struck something deep inside her. All the fear, all the humiliation she had braced herself for, gone. And then, like a wave building in the distance, the applause erupted. Not polite claps, not half-hearted approval. It was thunderous, unrestrained. People stood, their hands clapped furiously. Some guests laughed, shaking their heads in disbelief. Others nodded, eyes gleaming as if they had just witnessed something extraordinary. Some were quietly wiping away tears. They hadn't just heard her music. They had felt it. Evelyn Carter had poured her soul into every note. Her heart still pounded in her chest, her veins still pulsed with adrenaline. What had she just done? She didn't know what she had expected, but it certainly wasn't this. She scanned the crowd, the faces now alight with admiration, and then she found William. He stood at the far end of the room, not clapping, not smiling. The mask of cold indifference he always wore, gone. Instead, there was something else, something Evelyn couldn't quite name. William Sinclair looked as if he had just been struck by lightning, as if he had witnessed something he never thought possible, as if he had just seen a ghost from his past. He didn't move. His face had gone pale, his eyes wide, stunned, unblinking.
For the first time since she had met him, William Sinclair had nothing to say. Then, without a word, without a single reaction, he turned on his heel and walked away, up the grand staircase, out of sight. And for the rest of the night, William Sinclair never returned to the party. But Evelyn Carter hadn't even begun to process what had just happened, because at that moment, the entire room was closing in around her. Guests rushed forward, hands reaching out to grasp hers. "Unbelievable! Where did you learn to play like that? My God, that was extraordinary!" A chorus of astonishment filled the air. Eyes widened with disbelief, some guests still struggling to comprehend what they had just witnessed. Evelyn forced a smile, nodding politely in response. But the room felt like it was spinning around her. She had spent years being a ghost among these people, unseen, unnoticed. And yet, in a single moment, they were looking at her as if she were a star. She rose from the piano bench, her instinct driving her to search for Noah. He had moved closer, his small hand reaching for hers. Evelyn grasped it tightly, the warmth of his fingers anchoring her back to reality. The applause, the praise, they didn't matter. The only thing that truly meant something was the pride in Noah's eyes. The party gradually returned to its rhythm. Guests drifted back into their conversations, but the atmosphere had shifted. And Evelyn, she stood beside the piano, feeling as though the very ground beneath her had shifted too. She leaned down, whispering to Noah, "Let's go home, sweetheart?" He nodded immediately, excited but exhausted. And Evelyn knew that leaving now, before anything could ruin this moment, was the smartest choice. They made their way outside, heading toward the car. But just as Evelyn reached for the door handle, a strange sensation crept over her. Something about this victory felt wrong. A quiet unease curled inside her, spreading like ink in water. William Sinclair wasn't the kind of man who let things go. He wasn't the kind of man who enjoyed being caught off guard. And he certainly wasn't the kind of man who tolerated being overshadowed at his own party. Evelyn didn't know what was coming next, but she knew this wasn't over. The car pulled away, carrying them farther from William's estate, leaving the grand mansion behind.
The sounds of the party faded into the distance, becoming nothing more than a faint echo. But Evelyn couldn't shake the unease curling in her stomach. She had put everything into that performance. She had revealed a part of herself she had locked away for years. And yet, there was a part of her bracing for something, like a hammer waiting to fall. Beside her, Noah, now curled up in his seat, broke the silence. "Mom, you were amazing." His voice was small but filled with awe. "I didn't know you could play like that." Evelyn looked down at her son. His smile, bright and pure, melted something inside her. She let out a quiet laugh, the weight in her chest momentarily easing, replaced by something else. Love, relief, and pride. "I didn't know I could either," she admitted softly. They arrived home, but the weight of the evening still clung to her shoulders. She gently tucked Noah into bed, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "Good night, sweetheart." He had already fallen asleep, but the contented smile remained on his lips. It was only when she sat at the edge of her own bed that the chaos in her mind caught up to her. The applause, the stunned expressions, the way they had looked at her like they had never truly seen her before. It all felt like a dream. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape reality. What haunted her most wasn't the crowd. It was William. His face, pale, unsettled. His wide eyes, as if he had seen a ghost. Even now, in the darkness of her room, the image wouldn't leave her. William Sinclair had been shaken, and Evelyn Carter had no idea what that meant for her future. Time passed, but the weight of that night didn't leave Evelyn. She tried to return to normal, working, taking care of Noah, keeping up appearances. But in the back of her mind, that moment still lingered, the moment everything changed. She remembered Noah's radiant smile, the applause that had echoed through the room, but most of all, she couldn't forget the look in William's eyes. He wasn't the man used to being surprised. He wasn't the man used to losing control. And that worried her. A sudden buzz against the kitchen counter made her jump. Her phone vibrated. An unknown number. Frowning, she quickly wiped her hands on a dish towel before picking it up. A short message flashed across the screen. And the moment she read it, her heart stopped. "Evelyn Carter, this is William Sinclair. I'd like to meet with you. Can we talk? Let me know when you're available." A wave of tension crashed over her. She could feel her pulse hammering in her chest. What did William want? Was this just a conversation or something else? She stared at the screen, fingers hovering motionless.
Should she answer? Or should she pretend she never saw it? She didn't know. But Evelyn Carter had a feeling William Sinclair wasn't the kind of man who accepted being ignored, and that was the last thing she wanted. She didn't want to be pulled back into his orbit, walked to the window. The dim glow of streetlights bathed the empty road below. A part of her wanted to ignore the message, to pretend she had never seen it. But she knew that wasn't an option. William Sinclair wasn't a man who was easily ignored. No matter what was coming, Evelyn had to face it. She couldn't run. Not when Noah was depending on her. And maybe, just maybe, this wasn't what she thought it was. With a reluctant sigh, Evelyn picked up her phone and quickly typed out a response. "I'm free tomorrow afternoon. Where do you want to meet?"
The reply came sooner than she expected. A small cafe on the outskirts of the city. Evelyn frowned. Not a five-star restaurant. Not some high-end lounge where men like William Sinclair typically conducted business. A cafe? What did that mean? Unease curled in her stomach, but regardless, she would go. She didn't have a choice. Evelyn arrived 10 minutes early. Her stomach tightened with every step. She had no idea what she was walking into, but one thing was certain. William Sinclair hadn't called her here just for small talk. And she couldn't let him see her nerves. She had to hold her ground, because whatever this was, it had the power to change everything. She had chosen a simple outfit, nothing flashy, but still appropriate. Yet as she stepped into the cozy cafe, she felt out of place. The warmth of the space, the soft chatter of customers, the scent of freshly brewed coffee. It was so different from the tension simmering inside her, the storm of emotions waiting to break free. William was already there, sitting at a table by the window. But he looked different. No expensive suit, no perfectly composed image of power. Instead, he wore a soft sweater and jeans, his hair slightly tousled, as if he hadn't spent hours perfecting his appearance. He looked human. There was something tired about him, something almost vulnerable. For the first time, Evelyn saw him without the armor of arrogance, and it caught her off guard. As she approached, William stood. A flicker of a smile crossed his lips. "Evelyn, thank you for coming." She nodded slightly, unsure how to respond. The unease still lingered, but there was something in his voice, something unfamiliar. Gentleness. They sat across from each other. A heavy silence settled between them before William cleared his throat. His gaze lowered to the table.
I've been thinking a lot about that night. His voice was quieter, absent of its usual commanding tone. About what happened. About what I did. Evelyn remained silent. Her hands tightened in her lap. She didn't trust herself to speak just yet. William lifted his gaze, and for the first time, it wasn't filled with arrogance or indifference. There was something else there. Something raw. I owe you an apology. Evelyn's heart pounded. I was cruel to you. And I know it. I intended to humiliate you that night. She had known. She had known from the beginning that William had set her up, but hearing him admit it, openly, honestly, was something else entirely. The anger Evelyn Carter had buried deep inside suddenly surged to the surface. She pressed her lips together, forcing herself to stay composed. But William kept going. You did something I didn't expect. His voice dropped lower. Your music. It brought back something I thought I had forgotten. It reminded me of my wife. It reminded me of the man I used to be when she was still alive. Evelyn stared at him, startled by the shift in his tone. He was no longer the arrogant, cold man she had known. There was something fragile in the way he spoke. William turned to the window, his gaze drifting to some faraway place. Margaret Sinclair used to play that piano every night, just like you. Music was where she found joy, where she escaped from everything else. I used to sit and listen, and back then, everything felt right. But when she died, I shut everything down. I buried every part of her. I became someone even I don't recognize anymore. His voice grew quiet, almost breaking. But when you played, you brought Margaret back to me. Not just the memory of her, but the memory of myself, the man I used to be. I'm not proud of who I've become, Evelyn. And I've realized I've taken all that bitterness out on the people around me. William lifted his gaze, his expression more sincere than she had ever seen. I don't know how to fix everything I've done, but I know where I need to start. And I need to start by apologizing to you.
Evelyn felt her anger subside, just a little. It didn't disappear completely, but something else began to take its place. Empathy. It was hard to hold on to resentment when she could see the man in front of her wrestling with his own demons. She inhaled deeply, keeping her voice steady but firm. I appreciate your apology. Outside the cafe, life carried on. Cars passing, people moving, the world still spinning. But inside, time seemed to slow. William's words lingered between them, heavy yet genuine. Evelyn took a sip of her coffee, still trying to process what had just happened. She hadn't expected an apology, and certainly not one that felt real. She studied him, the man who had tried to humiliate her, now sitting across from her, humbled. For the first time, she didn't know what to say. William cleared his throat, breaking the silence. I've been thinking a lot. His voice was softer now, almost careful. About what you did at the party, about the way you played, about how you lit up that room. Evelyn frowned slightly, curiosity flickering in her eyes. She wasn't sure where he was going with this, but she waited. William sighed, running a hand through his hair. My parties used to mean something. They were about connection,
about shared moments. But I lost that somewhere along the way. His head dipped slightly, as if ashamed of his own admission.
I used these events as a distraction. Behind the wine, the laughter, the extravagance, all that was left was emptiness. But that night, when you played, everything changed. I saw how people reacted to you, Evelyn. His eyes met hers, sharp yet no longer cold. That night, they weren't there for the luxury, for the champagne, for me. They were there because of you, because of what you gave them. Evelyn stayed silent. She remembered the applause, the way people had gathered around her afterward, praising her, marveling, but she had never thought about it like this. To her, that night had been something she had simply survived. But to William, it had changed everything. He continued, his voice gaining certainty. I want to bring that back. I want my parties to mean something again, not just be another empty display. And I think you can help me do that. Evelyn's heart pounded. Her fingers tightened around the coffee cup, as if it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Carefully, she spoke. I don't understand. What exactly are you asking? William leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. I want you to be the official pianist for my events. No more serving drinks. No more standing in the shadows. I want you to be the centerpiece of the evening, the reason people come. The words hung between them. A wave of emotion crashed through her. She had spent years blending into the background of those parties, and now William was asking her to step into the light. It was an opportunity, a mesmerizing, terrifying opportunity. Evelyn Carter had spent years as a waitress, doing what she had to do to pay rent, put food on the table for Noah, even at the cost of her own dignity at times. But this, becoming a pianist, taking the stage, becoming the focal point of high society events, it was too big, too fast, too far from the life she had accepted for herself. I don't know. Evelyn Carter's voice wavered. I haven't played professionally in years. What if I fail? What if they don't like me? William smiled, a rare smile, one without mockery. You won't fail. You already proved you can do this. And if it doesn't work out, you can always go back to serving. You have nothing to lose. But trust me, after the way people reacted to you last time, they'll love you. And the pay? It'll be better, much better. Evelyn's heart pounded. She saw Noah's face in her mind. How proud he had been that night. This could change their lives, more than she had ever dared to dream. Security, a future she never thought she could reach. But the fear was still there. Stepping into this world, from being invisible to becoming the center of attention, was she really ready for that? William watched her, patient but expectant. What do you think? Evelyn remained silent. A long pause stretched between them. Her mind spun. Doubts, fears, but also something else. A feeling she couldn't ignore. Maybe it was the memory of that night, music pouring through her, taking her to a place she had long forgotten. Maybe it was the way Noah had smiled at her after the performance. Or maybe this was her chance to reclaim something she had lost. Finally, she took a deep breath. All right. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. I'll do it. I'll play. William exhaled, his shoulders relaxing as if he had lifted a weight off of them. He smiled. This time, a real smile. You won't regret this.
I promise you, Evelyn. William's words echoed in her mind as the night of her first performance approached. This time, she wasn't carrying a serving tray. This time, she was the artist. The first event, featuring Evelyn Carter as the centerpiece, was more modest than William's previous extravagant parties, but that didn't ease her nerves. The entire day, she felt the weight of anxiety pressing on her. Her stomach twisted as she prepared, her fingers still agile, but it had been so long since she played for an audience. But when the lights dimmed and she sat at the piano, she let the music guide her once again. And then, something magical happened. The room fell into silence with the first notes drawn into the melodies she wove. When the song ended, the hush lingered for only a moment. Then, applause erupted. Warm, genuine. She could hardly believe it. But this wasn't pity. They truly loved her. The tips she received that night, more than she had ever earned serving drinks. But more valuable than the money were the small notes tucked into them, messages of gratitude from strangers. Words filled with emotion. You play beautifully. I never knew music could move me like this. Thank you for an unforgettable evening.
And that was just the beginning. From one party to the next, Evelyn Carter became an irreplaceable presence. Guests began anticipating her performances, requesting songs in advance. Classical pieces, modern compositions. Sometimes, someone would jokingly request a pop song just to see how she'd interpret it. She obliged, and even she was surprised by how much she enjoyed it. Gradually, William's parties began to change. They were no longer just displays of wealth. They became something more authentic, more meaningful. The transformation wasn't immediate, but it was undeniable. Gone were the excessive, ostentatious spectacles. Instead, people talked more, connected more. And it all started with a waitress who had once been forced to play piano as a joke. But instead, she had become the heart of these gatherings. The guests, those who had once come solely for indulgence, began to notice the shift. But they weren't upset. Instead, they were captivated. Evelyn Carter was no longer just background music. Her music became the soul of the evenings. She wasn't just playing notes. She was creating an atmosphere, bringing warmth to something that had long been missing from William's parties. The grand, empty displays of wealth faded. The over-the-top decorations, the overflowing champagne meant to impress, all of it disappeared. Instead, William's mansion became a place where people gathered for something more. The once meaningless extravagance turned into charity galas, fundraising auctions, community support events. Guests still enjoyed the luxury, but now the atmosphere was different. It had depth. It had purpose. The success of an event was no longer measured by how much was spent, but by how much was raised. William wasn't doing this to redeem himself anymore. He was doing it to truly make a change. His parties were no longer about him, no longer about wealth, but about the world beyond his estate, about giving back. And the most astonishing thing? The guests, those who once attended only to flaunt their status, began to change too. They didn't just come to show off. They came to contribute, to be part of something greater. And it all started with a poor waitress who was forced to play the piano. After a successful fundraising gala for the Children's Hospital, William found Evelyn Carter. She was still at the piano, her fingers resting lightly on the keys. The final notes had long faded. Most of the guests had already left, though a few lingered, thanking her for the beautiful performance. The room was quiet now, but the warmth of the evening still lingered in the air. William approached, a glass of wine in his hand. A rare gesture, not as a distant host, but something almost friendly. "You're extraordinary. You know that?" He leaned slightly against the piano, his voice soft but sincere. Evelyn smiled, still basking in the success of the night. "Thank you. I'm just happy to be here." William studied her for a few moments, his gaze more contemplative than usual. Something in the way he looked at her made her heart skip, not out of fear, but because she couldn't quite decipher what he was thinking. "I've been thinking about something." His voice dipped lower, carrying a quiet seriousness. "You've been doing this for a while now, and it's clear people love you. But I don't want this to just be a job for you. I know how much you love music, Evelyn." She looked up, searching his expression. What was he saying? She had grown comfortable in her role at these events. She had found a rhythm, security in the work. But she had never thought about something more. "What are you saying?" Her voice was cautious but curious. William held her gaze. "You're extraordinary. You know that?" He leaned slightly against the piano, his voice soft but sincere.
Life got in the way. I want to help you." Evelyn tensed. She didn't know how to respond to that. But before she could speak, William continued. "I've spoken to some people at the conservatory in the city. They're willing to take you in. I want to pay for your tuition, so you can go back to school, so you can pursue music the way you were meant to." The world seemed to freeze in that moment. Evelyn couldn't breathe. She had once had dreams. She had once longed to study music, to live in a world of sound and emotion. But all of that had ended the day Noah came into her life. She had never regretted it. Noah was everything to her. But deep inside, there had always been a quiet ache, a dream she had buried. She had long accepted that it would stay in the past. "William, Her voice caught in her throat. Too many emotions crashed over her at once. This is too much." William shook his head, firm but gentle. "No, you deserve this. You've given me more than you realize. You brought life back into this house, into these parties. You reminded me what it feels like to care about something real. And I want you to have the chance to follow your dream. If this is how I can help, then let me help." Evelyn felt her eyes sting. She didn't want to cry. She didn't want to show vulnerability. Not now. I don't know what to say." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I never thought I could go back. I never even let myself hope." William smiled. A smile without cruelty, without power plays. A smile she was beginning to recognize as the real him. "Say yes." His voice was quiet but certain. "You've deserved this for a long time." Evelyn looked at him. She saw the sincerity in his eyes. She saw the man who had once tried to humiliate her, now offering to lift her up. She barely recognized him, but she barely recognized herself either. She had known the answer from the start. She had spent too many years merely surviving, too many years pushing aside her own dreams. "Yes." Her voice was steady. "I'll do it." The conservatory wasn't just a school. It was a second chance. A door she had once believed was locked forever. Not because she had given up, but because life had never given her the choice. The day she stepped through the gates for the first time, a flood of emotions filled her. Excitement, fear, but above all, disbelief. She was really here. The dream she had thought was dead had never truly died. And yet, she wasn't just walking through this door for herself. She was doing it for Noah. She wanted to show her son that dreams don't die, even when they're delayed. Evelyn Carter's days became a whirlwind. She studied relentlessly. She took care of Noah. She still played at Williams' events, now transformed into meaningful gatherings rather than empty displays of excess. She was exhausted, but for the first time in years, it was the kind of exhaustion that felt good. The kind of exhaustion that came from doing something that mattered. The kind of exhaustion that brought fulfillment. The kind of exhaustion that came with joy. The conservatory was a whole new world. Most of Evelyn Carter's classmates were young, fresh out of high school, trained for years in ways she had never been. Most of them came from wealthy families, their paths paved long before they even arrived.
Evelyn Carter? She was a single mother who had spent a lifetime making sacrifices, but she knew one thing: she wasn't here to lose. She couldn't avoid the creeping sense of inadequacy as she looked around. The students surrounding her? They were younger. They were formally trained. They had advantages she never did. And her? A single mother in her 30s who had abandoned her dreams for survival? She had taken a path none of them had ever walked, but that didn't mean she was any less capable. And soon, everything began to change. The first few weeks were brutal, but she found her rhythm. The professors at the conservatory didn't just welcome her, they were captivated by her raw, unfiltered talent. Years away from music hadn't dulled her passion. The struggles, the losses, the battles she had fought, they all transformed into music, something that pure technique could never teach. It wasn't easy. During the day, Noah went to school. But at night, Evelyn was in a race against time. She picked him up, made dinner, and when he was asleep, she sat down with music sheets, revisiting theories she had long forgotten.
Late nights left her exhausted. Her fingers trembled as they danced over the keys, but she kept going because she knew she wasn't just chasing a dream. She was building a future for herself and for her son. Now, Noah was 7, and he was his mother's biggest fan. Every night he sat beside her, his eyes wide with wonder as he watched her hands move effortlessly across the piano. Sometimes he hummed along with the melody. Then, one evening, Noah looked up, his expression curious. "Mom, can you teach me to play?" Evelyn's heart swelled. "Of course, sweetheart. We'll start with something simple. Before long, you'll be playing just like me." They began with basic notes, simple melodies. Noah was a quick learner. His excitement filled their small home. But what surprised Evelyn the most was, teaching him reignited something within her. Music was no longer just about performing. Now, it was something she shared with her son. Every night, after dinner, Noah sat beside her. His small fingers carefully pressed the keys, his face full of concentration and determination, and in his eyes, Evelyn saw herself as a child. The same hunger, the same wonder at the magic of music. And as she watched Noah practice, she couldn't help but wonder, if things had been different, would their lives have always been like this? But she refused to dwell on the past. What mattered wasn't what could have been. It was the present, the life they were building together, the future she had never dared to dream of. Meanwhile, the performances at Williams' mansion continued, but now they had taken on a whole new meaning. The guests who frequently attended Williams' events began to notice her.
Soon, they started inviting her to play at their private gatherings, small weddings, charity galas, corporate events, places where music wasn't just an elegant backdrop, but an integral part of the experience. The most surprising part? These performances provided a stable income, more than she had ever imagined. She wasn't just playing to survive anymore. She was building a career. But no matter how busy her schedule became, Evelyn always made time for Noah. She knew his love for music was growing. And then, one day, it wasn't just a passion. It became a dream.
But for Noah, learning to play wasn't enough. He wanted more. One evening, he looked up and said, "Mom, I want to learn properly. I want a real teacher." Evelyn couldn't even describe the feeling that filled her. The little boy who once sat at her feet, watching her play in silent awe, now wanted to follow in her footsteps. And she had never been prouder. At one of William's parties, during a break between her performances, he approached her. This time, he wasn't holding a glass of whiskey, but a glass of water. A rare gesture. "I hear you're becoming quite the sought-after musician," he smirked, handing her the glass. Evelyn let out a small laugh, caught somewhere between gratitude and disbelief. "I never expected this. It's more than I ever dreamed of." William nodded slowly. He glanced out at the crowd, the wealthy guests who no longer attended just to flaunt their status, but to contribute to something bigger. "You deserve this." Then, he turned back to her, his expression holding something she hadn't seen before, genuine warmth. "And what about Noah? I imagine he's progressing quickly, isn't he?" Just the mention of her son warmed Evelyn's heart. "He's doing so well. He loves music. I've already enrolled him in formal lessons, and honestly, he's better than I was at his age." William chuckled softly. "I'm not surprised. He has an incredible teacher." Evelyn shook her head, laughing. "I'm just trying to keep up with him. He has the same passion I once had, maybe even more." A comfortable silence settled between them. Not the tension of the past, but something familiar, something warm. Then William met her gaze, his voice deeper, more serious. "You've worked so hard for all of this, Evelyn. You didn't just build something for yourself. You built something for Noah. I'm proud of you." The words made Evelyn freeze. She had never expected to hear that from William Sinclair, a man who had once seen her as nothing more than a servant in his grand estate. But now, they had come too far. Too much had changed. "Thank you." Her voice was quiet, but steady. "I couldn't have done this without you." William simply smiled, a humble, genuine smile.
"No, you could have. You would have. I just gave you a small push. The rest was all you." Sunlight streamed through the wide windows of the music room, casting a golden glow across the polished wooden floor. The cheerful chatter of children filled the space, their excitement echoing off the walls. Evelyn Carter sat at the piano, guiding a small group of students. Tiny fingers hesitated over the keys, clumsy but eager. And Evelyn couldn't help but smile at their determination. This was her life now. A life she had once thought was impossible, but now it was real. After graduating from the conservatory, Evelyn had been offered a teaching position. She wasn't just performing anymore. Now she was sharing her love for music with a new generation. She wasn't just teaching notes, she was teaching them to feel music the way she once had. Her students came from all walks of life. Some were children from her old neighborhood, kids who would have never dreamed of learning the piano. And then there were students from wealthy families, drawn to her reputation after her performances at William's estate. But when they sat in front of the piano, They were all the same. No backgrounds, no social divides. Only music and possibility. Evelyn realized she wasn't just teaching, she was finally living her dream. The years of struggle and sacrifice had given her more than just resilience. They had given her a deep understanding, something that made her an extraordinary teacher. She knew what it felt like to dream and be forced to let it go. She knew what it meant to fight for something greater than herself. And now, she was determined to help these children hold on to their dreams, to show them that with passion and perseverance, anything was possible. Noah was now 10, and he didn't just love music, he lived it. Under Evelyn's guidance, his talent flourished. His lessons became more advanced, and while he still trained with his mother, he had begun developing his own style, his own voice. Evelyn watched her son with immense pride. She knew her own journey had inspired him to carve out his own. They still lived in a small, modest apartment, but inside, it was filled with music, with laughter, with warmth. The struggles of the past, they were still a part of Evelyn's story, but they no longer weighed her down. She had learned how to move forward, to let success and joy fill the spaces that once held only pain. And it wasn't just Evelyn who had changed. William Sinclair had transformed too. His grand estate, once a fortress of loneliness and pride, had become something entirely different.
His parties were no longer displays of wealth. They had become events for the community. Every gathering now had a purpose: raising funds for underprivileged children, sponsoring music programs in schools, providing scholarships for young artists. He wasn't just opening his wallet, he was opening his heart. Tonight, William was hosting his most important event yet, a charity concert to fund a music school for disadvantaged children. And the one seated at the piano was Evelyn Carter. The same piano she had once only dared to dream of playing now sat beneath her fingertips. No longer an unreachable dream. She had conquered it. The audience settled into their seats. The air buzzed with anticipation. But tonight, Evelyn Carter wasn't performing alone. Noah Carter stood right beside her. His small hands hovered over the piano keys. This wasn't just Evelyn Carter's moment. This was their moment. The little boy who once sat at her feet, watching in silent admiration as her fingers danced across the keys, was now standing next to her, ready to play. Together, they began. The melody filled the room, their notes intertwining like an untold story.
A story of perseverance, of a love for music, of a dream that once seemed impossible, yet had become reality. As the final note rang out, the room fell into absolute silence. And then, thunderous applause erupted, louder than anything Evelyn Carter had ever heard before. The audience rose to their feet, the sound of clapping filling every corner of the hall. But for Evelyn, the only thing she truly felt was the small hand of Noah Carter wrapped in hers. Together they bowed, partners in music, partners in life. The applause continued to echo around them, but all Evelyn Carter felt at that moment was the overwhelming completeness in her heart. What do you think about this story? If you were Evelyn, would you have turned humiliation into an opportunity? And if you were William, would you have been willing to change? Share your thoughts below. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to spread the inspiration. We truly appreciate every single one of you who supports this channel. Throughout the creative process, there may be minor mistakes, and we hope you'll overlook them with kindness. Wishing you happiness, peace, and health in life. Stay tuned for more. Disclaimer: this story is entirely fictional. It is based on hypothetical scenarios and is not related to any real individuals or organizations. Every event in this video has been crafted to provide a multi-dimensional perspective and has been edited with the support of AI. If there are any shortcomings, we sincerely hope for your understanding. May you always find success, luck, and moments of joy.